Good morning. We're learning as Chutzpah for Shleim Filan Chaya Basarach and Meir Ben Cyril Peril. We are on Daf Chofei Aman Aleph by the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, about a quarter of the way down from the bottom, Tar b'kli eitz, Tameh b'kli matches, Tar b'kli matches, Tameh b'kli eitz. Continuing with our theme of contrasting similar things. And the truth is, I was a little bit inaccurate in the previous Gemara, and I kept on saying a kli cheres as opposed to a kli matches, but it's not really correct. It's kli cheres versus kli shetef, which includes both kli eitz and kli matches. Kli cheres is its own thing, and then everything else is in the same category. But within that second category, there's a division between a kli matches, a metal kli, and a kli eitz, which is a wooden kli. Generally, in order for something that is not food or a person to become tamei, it has to be a kli. It has to be a utensil. It has to have some utility. But there's differences, like we said, we just discussed before this about a kli charis, how it's metama, right? It's only metama from the inside, but it is able to be metama from the avir, which the other kelim are not. So that's the kli charis. Now we're going to talk about kli eitz and kli matches, a wooden kli and a metal kli. So that's going to, it's going to explain in what way is a kli eitz more chamer, and what way is a kli matches more chamer. Tanar Rabban, goil me kli eitz tamein, a unfinished kli eitz. It means it's already in its form for use, but it's missing, as we're going to see, some of the embellishments. It's not fully decorated. So those are going to be tamei. As the Gemara is going to explain, that kli eitz were generally more basic, less fancy kalim. So the embellishments were not strictly necessary. Even if it didn't have those decorations and embellishments, it was still used as a kli. Pshuteim tahirim, but the pshute kli eitz, a kli eitz without that doesn't have a receptacle to it, like let's say a mixing board, is tar. Gol me kli matches, but the other way around, with the kli matches, a metal kli, if it's missing all the embellishments and decorations, tahirin. It's going to be tar because these are fancy things. This Gemara is going to explain two possible distinctions, exactly what makes it fancy. But if it's missing that, then it's not really finished, and therefore it's not going to be able to be makabel tuma. It's not yet a kli to be makabel tuma. Pshutei and tameim, but there's no restriction like there is on kli eitz that it will be tamei if it's missing a receptacle. Nimsa, so we find tar b'kli eitz tamei b'kli matches, tar b'kli matches tamei b'kli eitz. What's tamei in one is going to be tar in the other, and vice versa. Now the Gemara defines ve'elohin golmei kli eitz. This is what it means: kli eitz that have that are missing the adornments and embellishments. Kol she'asid loshuf, whatever you're expecting, what you're planning to polish, to make it smooth. It means you have a kli eitz, but you haven't sanded it or lacquered it. L'shabetz, Rashi explains, it means like to be decorated with designs on it, or pictures or knobs. Legarer means to drag or to plane, to make it even. Lekarkev, the karkev, I believe, was the band around that's what we call the band around the shulchan. It means to band it around. Lahatiach betunis, to sand it with the rough skin of a certain fish. Mochusar kan, if it's missing the stand that holds it up. Oy oigen, or it's missing the rim. Oy oizen, or the handle. Tamei. All these things, by kli eitz, it's going to be tamei, because these are not 100% essential. Kli eitz are rough kalim that people would use even if they're not fully finished. However, mechusar chatita tar, if it's missing being hollowed out, if you have like a block of wood that needs to, you need to hollow it out to use as a kli, then it's going to be tar. That's obviously not a kli. In fact, the Gemara mechusar chatita pshita. What do you have to tell me? Of course, if it's not able to be used as a kli, it's clearly not a kli. So well, the chok kapiza bekava. You already hollowed out three-quarters of its insides, meaning that you started hollowing it out, and you did three lugin out of four. There's four lugin in a kav, and he did three of them. So that's obviously that's a functional lack flaw, and that is enough. Even though one might say it has three-quarters, until it's fully functional, that's not it's not able. That's not yet a kli to be makabel tumah. But we said the other way around, by a kli matches, by a metal kli, ve'elo engol kli matches. What's a kli mat? What's the unfinished kli matches? Kol she'osid loshuf, that you're going to polish, l'shavitz, you're going to decorate, l'garu, you're going to smooth it out, to plane it, l'karka, to put a band around it, l'hakish bekornum, if it has, like Rashi says that if it has little imperfections, and you're planning to, it's talking about metal, and you're planning to use a hammer to hammer out the imperfections. Mekosa kan, if it's missing the stand, or eigen, or the rim, or eisen, or the handle, tar. All of these things are not going to be makabel tuma, as we're going to explain in a minute, because golme kliates, kli matches, the unfinished metal kli, is really unfinished, and it's not considered to be complete that a person would use it, because it needs those embellishments. Mechusar kisoy tame. If it's missing its cover, a metal kli is missing its cover, it's still, the kli is still tame, because the cover is a separate thing. It's a separate kli. So maishnahani or maishnahani. What's the difference between golme kliates and golme klimatres? Why do we find this difference? Rabbi Yechanan says, since they're very a metal kli is something people are proud of, so they're only proud of it when it's finished. It's nothing to boast about if you have an unfinished kli. He says, no, it's a different thing. It's because since they're expensive, since they're costly, so it makes a big difference if they're finished. They're, if you have something that's unfinished, if you could charge $10 for it, when it's unfinished, it's only worth $5. But a kliates, if it's unfinished, the value only goes down a little bit. It takes 10 minutes to finish it off, so it only costs 50 cents less. So that doesn't make it unfinished. So come on, my bay now. What difference does it make whether the reason why golme klimatres, a unfinished, undecorated metal kli is going to be tar, is because it's fancy, it's something you can't show off, or if it's because it's expensive. So come on, it can be now you kliatzim. The difference is going to be whether a kli made out of bone is compared to golme klimatres. That means a bone kli is expensive, but it's not something you show off. It was useful, it was expensive, it was hard to make, but it wasn't something you show off. So when it was unfinished, when it was a golme kli etzem, if you say the reason for matras is because it's expensive, so golme kli etzem are also expensive, so you might say until it's finished, it doesn't have its full value. But if it's because of how fancy it is or how much you could show it off, so kliatzim people don't show off, so then you would say golme kliatzim would be tameh. V'azder Rav Nachman l'tameh, Rav Nachman is going l'shitas dam Rav Nachman kliatzim klimatres damu. That a kliatzim is like a klimatres. So you see that it's because of value, not because of how that you show it off. So Gemara, Mechlal d'chil yatzim makabli tuma. From this discussion, you see this can only be a nafkamina by a kliyatzim if a kliyatzim is in the first place able to be makabel tuma. Some things are not makabel tuma at all, right? Plastic is not makabel tuma, as we all know. We don't take it. It doesn't. It doesn't get tama. It doesn't. We don't take it to the mikvah. It's not. Has no kabbalas tama. In the Tanya, Rabbi Shmuel ben Eish, Rabbi Yechon ben Bereika, Omer, Ma tam loim v'chol maseh izim tischato. Anything that comes from a goat, you should be toivel if it becomes tamei. Lehevi davar haba min izim min hakorim min hatlofim. To tell you that something that what does it mean min izim from a goat? From the horns and from the hooves, which is bone. So how do you know that the bones and hooves and horns of other animals as well? It says v'chol maseh, not just a goat. Why did it say bedafke izim? So Gemara prat lo-ifis. It's coming to tell you izim as opposed to ifis. Ifis are taka excluded. The bones of and the horns or any kind of cartilage from a if is not hard enough to be considered a bone, and it's not going to be metama. Zok the Mishnah. Another comparison. Chayiv b'shkedim hama'orim potter b'mesukim. Chayiv b'shkedim hama'orim potter b'mesukim. Chayiv b'mesukim potter b'morim. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Chayiv b'shkedim hamarim potter b'mesukim. Whatever you chayiv on bitter almonds, you're going to be potter in sweet ones. Chayiv b'mesukim. When you chayiv on sweet ones, potter b'marim. You're going to be potter on bitter ones. You're only chayiv to separate shumas and maisus from something that is edible. That's a food. So there are some almonds that are very bitter, and as they get bigger, they get more bitter. So those shkedim hamarim, they're, as we're going to explain, when they're, according to the Mishnah, when they're small, when they first grow on the tree, they haven't developed the bitterness yet. So at that point, if you collect them, if you harvest them, so you're going to have to separate shumas and maisus until they're still edible. When they get bigger, they become bitter. But conversely, on a regular almond, a sweet almond, you're not going to harvest it when it's small. It's not yet ready. So it actually gets more edible, it gets sweeter as it becomes bigger. So when it's young, when it's small, you're not gonna eat it. So therefore, when it's small, it's not going to be chayiv and shumas and maisus, but when it gets bigger, you will. Zok Gemara. Tan Rabban, shkedim hamarim ketanim chayavim gedolim beturim. By the bitter almonds, when they're small, you're going to be chayiv and shumas and maisus. When they're big, you're going to be potter, like we said, because they get more bitter as they get larger. Mesukim gedolim chayavim ketanim beturim, and the other way around by mesukim. So that's like what we said in our Mishnah. He says, both, Rashi explains, both of them, both bitter and sweet almonds, when they're going to be small, they're going to be potter. He says even the bitter almonds are still too bitter when they're small, and certainly the sweet almonds that are going to get more sweet, they're going to be more edible, they're both not going to be mechayiv and trumas and maisus. But some have a different version of what Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi said. He said that both of them, if they're large, are going to be chayiv and trumas and maisus. Meaning even the sweet almond, when it gets large, is going to be, even the bitter almond, when it gets big, it's going to be chayiv and trumas and maisus. The Gemara was going to ask, how could that be? They're bitter, they're not edible. Amar Bilah, Hayreb Chanina B'tzipari Kedivri Omer Zevezel Leptur. He paskins like the first version of Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, Ulamanda Amazaz Alachiyav Gedalim Lamai Chazu. According to Manda Amar, that says that they both of them when they're large, even the bitter almonds when they get large, you're going to be chayiv in Trumas and Maisis. Lamai Chazu, they're bitter. What could you use them for? Since they can be roasted, even though they're bitter, they're still edible. You just have to roast them in fire, and then they'll be edible. So they're already considered to be a meichel. Therefore, it's mechayiv in Trumas and Maisis. Now the Mishnah talks about temed. Temed is a type of drink that's created by soaking the sediment or grape seed, the sediment of grapes or the grape seed in water. And eventually it ferments and it becomes a type of wine. Zok the Mishnah. Hatem hasemed ad shelo hichmetz einen nikach bekesef meiser. Until it ferments, you can't use it, you can't buy it with kesef of meiser sheni. The rule is if someone separates meiser sheni and he wants to be paid it for money and then he takes that money to Yerushalayim, that money in Yerushalayim must be spent on food. Wine is a kind of food. Water is not considered food. So before it ferments, this water that's mixed with the sediment or the grape seed of grapes, until it ferments, it's just water. So it can't be used you can't use your kesef meiser to buy it. Upaisel is hamikvah. On the other hand, water has a chumrah. We're saying that water can't be used with kesef meiser, but water that is not water that came from the ground. It's not. It was in a kli. It passes a mikvah. If you have a mikvah that's less than 40 saw, and you finish it with 3 lugin of mayim, if it passes the mikvah, and the mikvah will have to be refilled. It will have to be emptied out and refilled. So if it's considered water, it passes the mikvah. If it's considered wine, it doesn't pass the mikvah. It's only water, mayim she'uvim, that passes the mikvah, but wine that's been kept in a kli does not pass the mikvah. Misha hechmet. So that's all. So we're saying this temed, before it fermented, it's considered water, both that it can't be purchased with meiser sheni money, and it's also considered water that it passes the mikvah. Misha hechmetz, but after it ferments, nikach bekesef meiser, it's purchased with meiser money, the ain't a paisel es mikvah, and it doesn't passel the mikvah, because again, it's not water, it's wine. Ha'ach, a second din that's unrelated to the first part of the Mishnah. Ha'ach and ha'shutfin, brothers who are partners, k'shechayven bekalben, when they're mechuyev to bring a kalben. So a kalben was a extra fee, like when you buy Uber Eats, and all of a sudden they attack on extra fees. This is an extra fee that was added on to the machzis hashekel. Because when people would send the machzis shekel, you're mechuyev midaraisa to send half a shekel. But you send like an old worn out half a shekel. In those days, the value of a coin wasn't based on its denomination. It was based on its weight. And inevitably, coins would get worn out and they would lose some of the weight. So the chachamim misakin, you have to add on a kalban, you have to add on a small amount to your machzas shekel to make sure to get you over the hump that you have a full machzas shekel. But that only applied when a person was paying on his own behalf. But if another person paid on someone else, if someone sent a machzas shekel for his friend, then he only paid the actual machzas shekel without the kalban. So if brothers are shutfin, if they're partners in their estate, so there's a second part of this Mishnah to be aware of, is that when someone dies and he leaves over an estate to his sons, there's a period in which it's considered an estate. It's still the father's rishus, even though he's no longer here, he's passed away, but it's still considered to be in a different status of being in the estate. And the father can do things, as we'll see. One of the things he can do, the estate can be used to pay the machzas hashekel for his sons. So, if the brothers have already divided up the estate and they are regular partners in the estate, it's no longer part of the estate. So when they pay the machzas hashekel together, they're shutfin that are paying the machzas hashekel, they have to pay the kalban. That's not, there's no exception for partners. There's an exception if someone pays on behalf of someone else, but there's no exception for two partners. When they pay a shekel, they each have to pay a kalban. So when they're chayiv to pay the kalban, that means that they're full-fledged partners. Then piturim memaiser. At that point, whatever they're gonna own, the behemoths that they own together, they're gonna be shutfin in those behemoths. And the rule is, if two people are shutfin in a behemah, there's no din of meiser behemah. So it's gonna be a kula and a chumrah. When they're considered to be regular partners, their status has changed from being partners in an estate, where they're getting paid from the estate, to where they've now finished the probate, and now they each own their half of the estate. So there's going to be a disadvantage that they're now mechuyev in the kalban, but there'll be an advantage that since they're regular Torah Shutfin, they're potter from taking Meiser Behema. But if they are still getting paid from the estate, that means they're still getting benefits of the estate, but it remains unprobated. It hasn't yet been divided up, that they own their portions. So they're going to be mechayiv ma'aser behema. It fully belongs, the behemoths belong to the estate, which is only one person. And peturim and a kalban, that will pater them from the kalban, because then the estate is paying the machzas shekel on their behalf. It's being paid by another. It's being paid by the estate, by their dead father. And when someone pays someone else's machzas shekel, there's no chiyuv of a kalban. Okay. Now we're going to go back to the first thing we had said about temet. So talking about money. Masisim loy Rabbi Yehuda v'loy Rabbana. So machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon about how temet works, and l'chayra, what the status of temet is, of this concoction that was put together by mixing grape sediment with water. And our Mishnah seems to be not like either of them. The Tanya, Hamasamed, someone who's soaking his sediment to produce this liquid, this beverage of from the that it got a taste from the sediment, v'nasan mayim b'mida, and he drained out the water from, he put the sediment in water, and then he drained out the water. Umatza kedei midasai, and he finds the amount of water he extracted is exactly equivalent to what he had put in. There's no extra water that came out of the sediment. So we say, potter. It's potter from Trumas and Meisus. Since this, we according to the Rabbanon, you put in water, you took out water, so now it's a little bit flavored, it's a little bit colored, but it's the same water, it's still considered water, and there's no Trumas and Meisus on water. Yehuda Mechayiv. And Yehuda says, no, it got flavor and it got a color from the semed. Even if it's the same amount, it's still going to be chayiv. Now, there's no mention over here of fermentation, of being mechametz. So it seems that they're chaylik, whether it fermented, whether it got like a sour taste, like we're familiar with from wine, or if it just tastes like grape juice. So, money. Who could would our Mishnah be like? The Rabbanon say afagav the hechmetz. They seem to say that you're part of Trumas and Meisus. They didn't make a distinction. They said as long as you took out the same amount of water, you're going to be part of Trumas and Meisus. They would say even if it fermented. Rabbi Yehuda, and if it's Rabbi Yehuda, afagav the loyechmetz. Even though Rabbi Yehuda says it's in Bichayiv, he says even if you took out the same water, as long as it was, as long as it got the taste and it changed its color, it's going to be considered to be wine. It's going to be choiv and Trumas and Meisus, even without fermentation. No. The machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon was not talking about where it didn't ferment. That means they were only being chaylik where it did ferment. And if it didn't ferment, even Rabbi Yehuda would be maskim that it's not going to be b'choyev and shumas hamaisus just because it turned a little purple. And therefore, masis and Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah that says that kishahechmetz you're going to be chayiv is like Rabbi Yehuda who says if you take out the water, if it's hechmetz, it's chayiv. He also understands that the machlokes of Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan is talking about kishahechmetz. Temed semed shalochu bekasef meiser. If you took temed that was not hechmetz, and you bought it with meiser sheni money,
which according to Yehuda you're not allowed to. Mishnah.
Were you saying because it's we didn't say it's you're saying because it's not wine yet.
Right. That was
Right.
a Mishnah.
So, right. Right. Even according to everyone, it's not Rabbi Yehuda. You're saying because it's going. It's not. We didn't say we're talking about the Mishnah.
Oh, all right. I'm saying
we're saying
right. According to everyone, it wouldn't be.
According to everyone, l'chayra, before it's hechmetz, the way we just understood it. This is Rav Nachman bar Yehuda? No, it was Amr of Nachman, Amr bar Yehuda. Yeah. So this is also the same Baal Memra. He is the one who had said the machlokes was only b'shehechmetz, but b'shalei it's not food. So now shalacha b'kasef meiser ul'soif hechmetz kana meiser. It's still considered that it was kana meiser, even in spite of the fact that it wasn't l'chayra wine at the time that he used the money to buy it. My timer. You see, since it eventually became chametz at the time, so that means that it was really, even though you didn't see it, it hadn't yet happened, but the potential was there for it to become wine. So we treat it as if it was already wine. Frakta Gemara, El Masisin Diktani Hechmetz in Leichmetz Loi. Why? Well, our Mishnah is also talking about buying with Meiser Sheni money. Why don't you wait and see if it's mechametz, and then we'll be able to say lemafreya that it was chametz, and therefore it was able to be bought with the Meiser Sheni money. Amarabba kishai mena b'kois v'lei hichmetz. We're talking about they bought this drink. And they drank it up, and the taka didn't become. Our Mishnah is talking about where shalei hichmetz, where never it was mechametz, and that's the reason why it's not going to become meiser sheni. So that's Rabba's teretz. Our Mishnah is talking about different mitzias. The Mishnah is talking about where it didn't eventually become chametz, and this din that we're saying now is talking about where it did become chametz. If it eventually becomes chametz, then we'll say gloya milsalam afreya. Be like a Zabrera. Rava Amahaman Rebbecha ben Nurihi. The Tnan, Shloish Lugamayim Chasa Kurtiv. If you have a little bit less than 3 lugan of mayim, missing a kurtiv of water. So we had said, or if you remember, when you have 40 saw of mayim in a mikvah, 39 saw of mayim in a mikvah, and you add 3 lugan of mayim, she'uvim, that will pass all the mikvah. But this is a little less than 3 lugan of mayim. And she'nafal l'soichen kurt of yayin, and enough of wine, a kurt of a small amount of wine fell to be mashlam it to 3 lugan, u'marein kamari mari yayin, and it looks like wine, it's the color of wine, v'nafal l'mikvah, and it fell into the mikvah. Lo paslu, it's not going to passel, since it looks like yayin, it's treated as wine. The 3 lugan are not treated as mayim shuvim, but they're treated as wine. But if a quart of milk fell into it, milk is also like wine that's not considered mayim. But water is not as colorful as wine, so it doesn't affect the 3 lugan to make it appear as a different color. loy paslu. It's not going to pass the mikvah because it's still, even though even though it looks like water, it still is missing. It's not 3 lugan of water. He disagrees, so he'll say by the case of the cholav that it's going to passel the mikvah. It's going to be considered of water because of the appearance. Lavam Rav Yechon basa chazusa is linan. Hachanami zil basa chazusa. The time the chazusa, the high mayaninu. So he wants to say this the semed um does not it does not get enough color until he holds that fermentation is what makes the color change. Or the lavdavka, even if it the fermentation also changes the color. So prior to fermentation, it still has the look of water. So therefore, it's not going to be able to be bought meiser sheini money. Once it ferments, then it will.
Essentially, we're saying, that you don't look at the future, you look at the current. Is that
Well,
what, I mean, according to Rebbe Menori?
According to Rebbe Menuri, it's not just you don't look at the future. The future is irrelevant because we care about the look right now. It's a second thing. There's 2 steps. He
Right,
cares about the way it looks, and he only cares about the way it looks now. If you're talking about the status of it, that it's something that is wine because it ferments, then you could say it's already on its path.
right.
But as far as the look, that's a more shallow, a more superficial thing. So we just look at the way it is now. Okay, we'll stop over here. It's very, very late. Sorry, I really apologize. I don't know what happened.
All right. I'm glad we got a chance.
Dovi, I thought